अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी, वी आर बैक। आइसोलेशन जोन में मौजूद हैं और जिस तरीके से आपको पहले भी बता चुके हैं कि आइसोलेशन जोन में अभी हम एक जो रिसेंटली प्लेन क्रैश हुआ कराची में, उससे रिसेंटली हमारे पास क्या क्या अपडेट्स हैं उसकी तरफ बढ़ेंगे। हमारे साथ हमारे को होस्ट मौजूद होंगे जिनका नाम है उमर खान, और हमारे साथ हमारे बहुत ही अच्छे से गेस्ट मौजूद हैं जिनका इंट्रोडक्शन उमर कराएंगे। जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम उमर।
Walaikum salam, and first of all, I'd like to welcome a very special guest for today, Juan Browne, and he's very kind to join us, and he's a very seasoned person when it comes to flying. He has the experience of over 40 years in flying. He started off his career with the US Air Force, and he's seasoned to fly all sort of airplanes, especially he's been flying C-141s and C-130s. And then for 20 years, he is associated with commercial airlines as well in USA and flying Boeing 777. And he also has 3 years of flying experience with the A320s, the same airplane that crashed in Pakistan previously last week. So we'll be discussing in detail about that. So first of all, welcome to the show, Juan, and thank you so much for your time. I hope you're well and everything's well at your end.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, everything's going great over here in Northern California.
Absolutely. So glad to hear that. So you heard the news about the Pakistan Airlines air crash at the flight 8303, and we saw your reviews on YouTube as well. And what would you like to say about it? How you summarized it? That what exactly happened? What exactly went wrong?
Well, we have to wait until the investigators get all the data. We are anxiously awaiting the cockpit voice data recording and the data recording from the aircraft itself. But right now there's video evidence, photographic evidence, and ADS-B radar data return evidence that gives us a lot of clues as to what happened at this point. So all we can really do is talk about the evidence that we have at present to date. And at right now, it looks like that this approach started out as a very high and fast approach, too high and too fast, non-standard approach that put the aircraft too fast to touch down on the runway in its normal landing position, and the aircraft ended up touching down halfway down the runway. And it sounds like, to the surprise of the crew, the landing gear was not down.
Right.
In that surprise moment, the crew went around after scraping both engines on the runway and damaging those engines. And then it appears that those two engines ended up failing on the subsequent go around and attempt to return to the runway. And in that video footage that you just showed of the final seconds of the flight, it was not until then that they were able to successfully get the gear down.
Indeed. And yes, Farheen.
Yeah. Why usually are pilots flying so high, hot and high? Any technical reasons behind it?
Yeah, we don't know why. Why did this approach start out so high to begin with, so close to the airport? I'm not intimately familiar with the procedures coming into Karachi airport, but this is something that a pilot needs to stay ahead of the jet. They need to be able to visualize, and this captain was very experienced at 17,000 hours, and that's what's even more surprising, is normally pilots stay ahead of the jet. They can see this situation developing ahead of time. They can see that they're too high and too fast and need to make the necessary corrections. The big question is, why didn't they make the necessary corrections beforehand? On a normal approach and landing, the aircraft, standard operating procedures around the world, the aircraft needs to be stabilized on the proper glide path with all the checklists completed, the landing gear down, and on speed at 1,000 feet above the ground prior to landing. In this case, they were several thousand feet above the ground and much too fast to ever achieve a proper approach speed to land on this runway. And when you land on the runway, you need to cross the end of the runway at 50 feet on speed and touch down in the first third of the runway, no further than 3,000 feet down the runway. If none of these parameters are met, or if at any time any of these parameters are out of limits, the pilot not flying needs to direct the pilot flying, if he hasn't done so already, to simply go around.
Right. And we saw from the pictures that were visible later on that the runway had the marks of the engines dragging on the runway floor. If you can see that on screen. So here are some of the visuals where we can see that the engines were dragged. So these marks were found on multiple areas, not at one position, at distance on different locations. So you also have the experience of flying A320. If the person knows that their engines are getting damaged, and if you are flying this plane, what would have you done under this situation? Would have you gone for the second round, take the risk of taking the flight again up in the air?
So you're getting to the point of why did they go around after they hit the engines on the runway? Why didn't they just stop? Well, that's a matter of the crew being, I think you're going to find out that the crew was completely startled. I think you're going to find out that the crew was completely surprised that the landing gear was not down, and it was just a gut reaction to go around. They've already keyed up for a potential go around because they know they've been coming in hot and high. They may not make the runway or get it stopped in time before the end of the runway. They're keyed up for a go around. Once they realize the gear's not there, it's just a sudden reaction. Oh no, the gear, and they put the power to it and go around. We don't know this for sure yet. We've got to look at all the data, especially the cockpit voice recording data, but it's just a natural reaction as to why they went around. So the key is to prevent this chain of events from happening much earlier, and either following the ATC instructions. The air traffic controller was offering about a 180-degree turn to knock off the approach and get in proper position, get to the proper altitude for their distance. But the crew elected to continue with the approach in this extremely unstable condition. So would they, in hindsight, would they have been better off to just go ahead and scrape it onto the runway? Perhaps, but it was just such a surprise to the crew that they ended up taking it around with
my next question is, you can see on the timeline as well. Is it possible the landing gear showed down but not locked due to some reason before first landing try?
That is certainly possible, and investigators will be able to quickly determine that once they get the data recorders from the aircraft. So it's too early to tell. Was there a problem with the landing gear, or was this simply a problem of forgetting the landing gear? We don't know this yet. One thing about the Airbus design is that the Airbus design will not allow you to lower the landing gear if in the event your indicated airspeed is above 260 knots. This aircraft hit 260 knots as low as 2,000 feet above the ground in a desperate attempt to dive down onto the glide slope. This may have very well inhibited the proper extension of the landing gear because of the safety systems that are built into the Airbus aircraft. And the whole reason behind that is you don't want to structurally damage the gear from excessive aerodynamic loads by lowering it at too high of an airspeed.
Right, Juan, you mentioned that the crew was stunned. They were not expecting the engines to touch down on the ground, and they went for the second flight. This also another thing that is surprising is that when they went on the second round, still the recordings that we got from the pilot speaking to the control room, he was very calm and composed. He was so
Omar, why not we should move towards the recording?
Yes, we will. Let me just continue with the question, then move towards the recording. So he was really calm and composed, and we did not hear the crew giving safety instructions to the passengers, because even the survivor had this thing that even the crash was a surprise for them. Till the last moment, even the crew did not know that they were about to get crashed.
Yes, the whole thing became quite a shock and a surprise to them, starting with the point at which the engines hit the runway. That's what completely startled this crew into reacting the way that they did. But we got to get the voice data recorder to see exactly how they reacted to the rest of the emergency after they hit the runway as well.
Right, and absolutely many things will get further clear once we do get the recordings. Over to you, Farheen.
I think producer Saab, we should can we play the video?
303 approach.
Ji sir.
Appears to be turning left.
While proceeding that, sir, we have lost engines.
Confirm you are carrying out belly landing. Runway available to land at 25.
Roger. Clear, Mayday, Pakistan 8303.
Pakistan 8303, Roger sir. Both runways available to land. Pakistan 8303 approach.
Ji sir.
Appears to be turning left.
While proceeding that, sir, we have lost engines.
Confirm you are carrying out belly landing. Runway available to land at 25.
Roger. Clear, Mayday, Pakistan 8303.
Pakistan 8303, Roger sir. Both runways available to land.
Right. So when you heard it, this was the very last audio recording we had moments before the plane crashed. What I look at it, because the area surrounded the airport was a residential area. Usually the 5 kilometers should be cleared, and in the end the plane collided with the building. And from the audio what I access, I would like to have your take on it, that the pilot was so confident that he'll be able to get the belly landing, and even the landing gear were working fine on the second round. But I personally think that the plane collided with the building.
Well, the airplane was running out of airspeed. The engines were failing, and the aircraft was running out of airspeed, and it was stalling into the aerodynamically stalling into the buildings. On that audio recording, you can hear that the pilot is making a left turn to the runway, realizing that he needs to land right now because he's losing the engines. This somewhat surprises the air traffic controller because he's expecting to vector him further downwind before starting his turn to final. But the pilot realizes he's got to turn in and make a bid for the runway right now. And then he realizes he's not going to make it. He's just lost too much altitude and too much airspeed because the engines have failed on him. And so the aircraft, that's why you see that very high angle of attack as the aircraft makes its final descent with the gear down, by the way, into the buildings. He's just lost all his altitude and airspeed.
Some people say that the initial part of recording was of the second attempt of landing, after belly landing had been done already.
Yes, this was from the second attempt.
Yeah, these were the final moments of the flight.
Right. We did have 2 miraculous survivors, and as you just said that the plane was stalling. So if we have survivors, that means that till the very last moment, the pilot tried to control the plane. He tried to glide it towards safety, and that is the reason we have 2 survivors. Both the survivors, one survivor, he fell off with his seat before the crash, and the other survivor ran out of the plane once it crashed. And his statement was that when he was running out, he heard people screaming and crying. So that means that if the rescue team were there some time before, we could have saved more lives, because many lives were lost due to the burn.
Potentially, yeah. I don't know anything about the rescue operation. It looks like the streets there are very congested. It's very hard to get the rescue teams into the aircraft at that time. The fact that 2 people did survive this crash is rather miraculous, and the fact that nobody on the ground was killed. I understand there were only 4 injuries on the ground. That's rather miraculous as well. So the rescue operation, I don't know the details on that.
Right. So we do have audience with us. We'll include their question as well. We saw in your video, you shared about that sound, that ding, ding, ding sound that it indicates about the problem.
Right. Great question, Zed. So this aircraft was so unstable on this approach that it was firing off a number of warnings. And there was probably so many warnings going off that, and the crew was so focused on trying to salvage this bad approach, that they may very well have ignored the warnings for the landing gear not being extended. Also, the aircraft was so fast, they may have been above the 260 knot safety valve limit for the landing gears, that they may not have received that proper landing gear not down warning. Nevertheless, you can look at the instrument panel and see you're supposed to verify that the gear is down with 3 green lights prior to every landing. And this all goes to the problem of not having a stabilized approach, stabilized enough to sort all this out in a timely fashion like you're supposed to. So this aircraft was experiencing numerous warnings. We don't know if all those warnings were working correctly until we get all of the data from the data recorders.
So let me tell you all. We have our another guest, Mubashir Lucman Saab, is with us, or Omar.
Yes, first of all, welcome to the show, Mubashir Saab, and we have this Juan Browne, who has explained the whole scenario of the PIA crash very well. And Juan, I would like to introduce our guest. Mubashir Lucman is a very seasoned anchor and is very well known for his public appearances on the TV, and very experienced regarding that. So we'll be having him in the show as well, and definitely you must have things to ask you as well. So as you said that many of the precautions were there, many of the alarms were there. What do you personally think? Did the mind froze of the pilot, or he got confused? What went wrong? Like, because there are series of mistakes and blunders.
We don't know what was going through the minds of the pilots, and we won't know until we piece all of this data together. It's going to be very important to listen very carefully to the cockpit voice recordings, and it's also going to be very important to understand the working culture within Pakistan International Airlines to help us understand that which we're going to hear on the cockpit voice recorder. So all of that will eventually help us understand what was going through the minds of the pilots. Until then, we really have no idea. We only have the physical evidence that's out here in front of us at this time.
Absolutely. So, Mubashir Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So, welcome to the show. We have with us Juan Browne, who has explained the whole scenario of PIA crash very in detail and technically. So, if you have anything to ask, please, sir.
I think I would only add one thing that I've said the first time I was on your show, that when a crash happens, it's never an isolated event. It is a series of events, and over a period of time.
Yeah.
Typical of the Civil Aviation Authority, their training, their checks, their ratings, the licensing, everything, and the ATPL checks, and then the training department of PIA, and whatever goes on over there. Over a period of time, over a period of years, we see a lot of compromises, and we see a lot of people in positions of authority where they shouldn't be at all. And they are there because they know someone or they're related to someone. And that's a very serious allegation that I'm making. I'm not making a small allegation. And I can tell you, even today, as we speak, I'll be very surprised. I mean, let me rephrase that. I'll be very surprised if 50% of the pilots on A320 have valid licenses. As it is, as I speak to you, 18 pilots on the ATRs, their licenses have been questioned. Those queries have been with CA for a long time, and there is no response. And this kind of attitude in aviation will result in disasters. Aviation does not believe in delaying things and delaying answers. And I think they are now being criminal about it, because when you have 16 accidents, 16 crashes over a period of years, then your whole system has to be reviewed very seriously. And your training models, your approval models, your ATPL models, your licensing, everything. And even the ATC, for instance, I'm shocked that the ATC said that he's hot and high, and yet the ATC did not not tell him that he's not clear to land, whereas it was the ATC's prerogative at that time, you know. And then the ATC never handed him over to the tower. And it just took him along. And the pilot never asked for a switchover either. The ATC never gave a switchover. There's a whole series of mishaps that we're seeing here. I'm not going to talk about the pilot alone. He's not here to answer anything on him. But the fact of the matter is, it was bad piloting. It was weak piloting. And, there are many errors. And for instance, when you are flying and you're fasting, you're breaking a cardinal rule, because PIA, like many airlines in the Muslim world, have issued instructions, categorical instructions to their crew that they cannot fast while they're flying. And when you do that, you sort of close your fast around 3 a.m. in Lahore, and then you start flying at 1:30, and your blood sugar level is down, your response level is down, everything is down, and you can hallucinate. It's very simple.
Yes. Absolutely.
अच्छा मुबशिर साहब, एक क्वेश्चन मैं, क्योंकि हमारी लोकल ऑडियंस भी सुन रही है तो उनके लिए हम उर्दू में भी सवाल साथ साथ करते जाएंगे। एक सवाल मैं आपसे जरूर करना चाहूंगी कि जैसे आपने कहा कि बहुत सारे हमारे पायलट्स के लाइसेंस जो है वो क्वेश्चनएबल है। इतने अरसे से इतनी सारी चीजें हो रही हैं और इतने कम अरसे में इतने सारे प्लेन्स का क्रैश कर जाना, और उसके बाद जैसा आपने कहा कि ये सीरीज है पूरी की पूरी, क्या आपको लगता है कि इस पे प्रॉपरली इस दफा कोई ना कोई एक्शन लिया जाएगा? और जिस तरीके से कहा जा रहा है कि ब्लैक बॉक्स मिल गया, बट अभी तक कॉकपिट की रिकॉर्डिंग नहीं मिल पाई है, बिल्डिंग्स में ढूंढनी जा रही है, न्यूज में आपने भी डेफिनेटली देखा होगा, तो ये किस तरफ जा रही है पूरी स्टोरी?
मेरा ख्याल है कि ये जिस तरफ भी जाएगी ये इस बारी छुपेगी नहीं। और मैं आपको एक बात बताऊं, आई नीड टू टेल यू समथिंग, दैट 1 year before the ATR crashed, and its call sign was Alpha Papa Bravo Hotel Oscar, and I on my television program at prime time, I claimed that this plane has been tampered with and it can go and crash anytime. And I did 2 or 3 shows on that, and the PIA thought that I was joking, and they actually, made serious allegations on me that how I do my show, and with the flimsy reporting and flimsy investigation. And then that same plane crashed, sadly. And then I also made a claim about 2 other ATRs, and they were out of service for a while because they had serious malfunctions of the engines. Unke propellers, they started reversing while they were taking off, so they had to be grounded and redone because PIA had repaired the propellers and de-icers of the ATR that they were not authorized to do. They had to go back to the parent company. So मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, what I'm trying to say is, for years and years there have been too many screw ups, and we've been taking things for granted. This is not a simple bicycle that you ride and the chain breaks and you come and put back the chain and you start riding again. The whole business of aviation depends upon many things. One of them is your ability, and second is know-how, knowledge, and third is trust. You have to trust each other for the job being completed and being done right. And when somebody is not doing it right, or somebody is cutting corners, then there are crashes. And you must understand one thing, that we have tall claims for our aviation sector, but have you ever realized that 80% of all crashes have happened in the third world, who have the smallest of the fleets, and only 20% of accidents have happened in the first world, who have the largest number of fleets? And it has got nothing to do with money. It's got to do with SOPs and standard operating procedures that are not taken for granted. End of story.
Very rightly said. Juan, what would you like to add to the things that Mubashir added?
We need to bring everybody up to the same level of standard operating procedures that's found throughout the world. There are different various levels of safety as you travel around the world, and we need to bring everybody up to that same level of standard operating procedure safety.
Right. Juan, you yourself have such experience of flying. I'm sure that there must have been times where things got out of control or there was a panic situation How are pilots actually trained under these circumstances on things? Because these are machines and anything could go wrong. And as we've seen, there are a series of events that went wrong over here. So would have done something differently after the first touchdown, or you would have gone for the same approach that the pilot went for?
The thing is, you needed to stop this chain of events. As our guest said, this is a long series of chain of events. This chain needed to be broken way back in the approach phase as he was too high and hot. They needed to at least consider what ATC was telling them, that they're too high and too hot, and take it around for another approach. We need to find that cockpit voice recorder. How is the communication between the captain and the co-pilot? The co-pilot needs to speak up and say that we're not meeting the parameters. We need to knock off this approach and we need to take it around. Right. So there's lots yet to find out about this, but we needed to break that chain long before that aircraft ever got close to that runway at that incredible rate of speed.
Right. As we can...
could dumping of more fuel before crash would have made any difference?
No, there was no. Let me tell you one thing, because our guest maybe doesn't know about it. Let me interject over here. That when he went up, first of all, he should have been on the ground. He should have tried to stop it over there. But when he went up, and then instead of taking the flight controller, he told him to take a left heading of 0180, and he went downwind as well. What he should have done is, across the road, about a few thousand meters ahead of him, was the Faisal base, where C-130s land and take off every day. He should have just landed over there. He didn't have to come around all the way, because by that time he should have made out that he had made a big blunder. It was a serious pilot error, and the pilot did not know how to react, and which he should. And we cannot be pardonable just because people have lost their lives. We have to take it very seriously.
That's a great point about that airbase.
Mubashir, first of all, how and why did ATC grant permission to land it if the first approach was not up to the SOP?
Not enough training. Not enough training. Your training is zero. And why I am a pilot, I should have gone and landed at that TF base over there, with an 11,000 for 11. I think it is, the runway length is about 11,000 if I'm not wrong, or maybe 9,000. So I mean, C-130s take off from there, and that was just right visual. Anybody who's taken off from 25 left or 25 right knows the position of that base. I mean, I just can't fathom to understand what was going through their minds.
I don't think the crew realized the gravity of their situation until it was much too late.
Well, sir, when you are hot and high, unfortunately, may I add, and no pun intended, ever since that movie Sully has come out, all these former Air Force pilots are trying to become heroes, and we've had too many cases of being hot and high in the past 3 years. At least 4 to 5 cases. This is not the first one. So that is where I stress on CAA and the training modules and the licensing and the ATPLs and the checks and all of that. It's a whole chain of events. That is what I've been shouting from the day one.
And,
yes,
and why pilots are preferring this in Pakistan? Air Force training influence or cutting time for distance?
Sorry?
Usually, why pilots are preferring this in Pakistan, hot and high position? Air Force training influence or cutting time for distance?
I told you the other day that when you all your life you've been flying a plane with, and the law of aerodynamics is that stability is inversely proportional to maneuverability. So a plane which is highly stable is highly unstable.
There could be a correlation between excessive military influence into the safety culture at PIA. I'm not familiar with it, but there is significant differences between military flying and civilian flying. And the civilian flying just needs to be brought up to the same standard as the rest of the world regarding standard operating procedures for airline flying, not necessarily military flying.
And you added a very nice point here. You have the experience of flying for the Air Force as well, and at the same time, you have been flying commercial flights as well. Can you please differentiate between the two, and what is the actual difference between flying an Air Force and a commercial flight for our audience?
Well, the Air Force has a mission, and that mission is completely unlike the same role that a commercial airline has daily, unless like in the 141 flying world, that would be the closest thing to airline flying. But even then, we would fly tactical approaches into tight situations that required you to come in a little high and hot. But those procedures simply do not apply in the civilian airline world at all. So it's different.
Right, and we've seen the committee that is analyzing this case has not even a single person who has flown the plane A320. So do you think that will make the difference, because we need a technical person who's actually been into a A320 and who has the experience of an A320 to be on that team?
Yes, yeah, you need somebody that's intimately familiar with the standard operating procedures of Pakistan International Airlines on that investigative team, and with Airbus experience.
The only thing that this current investigation team can do is assess the structural damage. They have no ability to judge an A320 effectively in any capacity.
And also, too, the folks in France will be going over this data, and they have a very well-experienced accident investigation team over in France, and I'm sure they will be able to get all the relevant data out of the aircraft data recorders and present it appropriately.
You see, one important point that I've been making for many years, and it falls on deaf ears, unfortunately, is that we have sold out all the civil aviation land in front of the approach runways, international runways, and they've become housing colonies, and they're birds all over. Every month there's a bird hit, practically, in Lahore, Karachi, or Islamabad. And any airline pilot will vouch for that. And you can ask anyone. And I mean, those authorities that allowed the approach of a short final to be converted into a model colony should be, I mean, charged with criminal offenses.
Your airport design should meet the same standard as around the rest of the world to ensure proper clearways from the ends of the runway to allow safe operations of aircraft. These design parameters are very well known and very well standardized around the rest of the world and should be complied with.
They actually should, and we should actually, I totally agree to it. We had a similar program where we discuss these things, and now things have come in more evidences are visible, and we're getting more clearer, and we're waiting for further evidences to get further cleared. So Mubashir साहब, हमारे पिछली बार भी जो प्रोग्राम हुआ था उस दफा से इस टाइम पीरियड में हमने ये रियलाइज किया कि उस वक्त हम कंफ्यूज थे रिगार्डिंग द इंजन फेलियर्स. उस वक्त हम यही एक्सेस करना चाह रहे थे कि वो बर्ड हिट है या क्या है, बट अभी पता चला है कि वो पायलट का एरर था कि इंजन फर्स्ट टचडाउन पे रब हुए हैं जमीन पर.
देखिए, मैं आपको अभी भी बताता हूँ कि बर्ड हिट तो अभी भी हो सकती है. जब वो अप्रोच कर रहा है उसको बर्ड हिट तो नहीं हुई है. वी डोंट नो टिल द रियल इन्वेस्टिगेशन रिपोर्ट कम.
ट्रू.
अच्छा मुबशिर साहब, मैं एक सवाल आपसे करना चाह रही थी.
And there could have been multiple things that could have gone. What I am interested in is, as your worthy guest on the panel was saying, that we need to break this chain of events, and we need to stop it, and we need to go back to the basics and start applying basic SOPs and start applying them strictly, irrespective.
Yep, you want to get a standard level of safety that's equal to everyone else around the world.
Yes, we definitely should look into it, and until we get the further updates, we will still be looking for answers. So thank you so much, Juan Browne, for your time. Thank you so much for the lovely insight. This was definitely needed for our audience as well, and hopefully these awareness sessions that we're doing will make an impact, and people do take action against the people who actually are responsible for the things, and hopefully in future we avoid such instances and such black days. Thank you for your time, Juan.
Any message for Pakistani people?
Our hearts go out and condolences to everybody involved in this tragic accident. Let's learn from it. Let's look at the facts and learn from the facts from this accident, so that, as our guest says, we can break the chain of events from this happening again in the future. Let's learn from the facts. Thank you.
You're most welcome, and thank you so much for your time, and keep doing the wonderful work that you do. And you can also please share your YouTube where people can follow you and they can get the updates. Can you please tell us about your YouTube channel?
Oh, YouTube channel. My YouTube channel, Blanco Lirio, on YouTube, and it's a lot, mostly about aviation incidents just like this. Blanco Lirio.
Right, so we'll definitely keep an eye on your channel as well for the updates. Thank you so much for your time and the lovely updates.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for reaching out to me. See you here.
Bye.
उमर, हमें बहुत सारी इंटरेस्टिंग चीजें पता चली, लेकिन मुबशिर साहब, प्रोड्यूसर साहब हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं या अभी मौजूद नहीं है? ओके, अच्छा उमर, 2-3 चीजें जो कि हम कोशिश ये करेंगे कि अपने एक और शो में इसको जरूर शामिल करें कि ये साइड तो अभी भी हम सिर्फ और सिर्फ जो प्लेन क्रैश हुआ, किसकी गलती थी, किसकी गलती नहीं थी, अभी हम यहीं पे अटके हुए हैं, लेकिन वो जो लोग इस पूरे के पूरे वाकये में सफर कर रहे हैं, जिन्होंने किसी न किसी तरीके से, अभी भी बहुत सारे लोग ऐसे हैं जो अपने प्यारों की लाशें कभी हॉस्पिटल में, कभी ईवी सेंटर्स में ढूंढ रहे हैं, उधर तलाश कर रहे हैं, और जिस तरीके से बार-बार PIA अथॉरिटीज की तरफ से या डिफरेंट कंपनीज या वो तमाम लोग जो इन्वॉल्व हैं, वो तमाम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो इन्वॉल्व हैं, उनका बार-बार ये क्लेम है कि जी हम तमाम लोगों से राब्ते में हैं, लेकिन मेरी 2 से 3 फैमिलीज से बात हुई है और उनका कहना ये है कि हमें कोई पूछने वाला ही नहीं है, हमारे पास कोई एक सिंगल कॉल तक नहीं आई। तो हम डेफिनेटली अपना कल का जो शो है वो इससे रिलेटेड करने वाले हैं कि उनका कोई पुरसाने हाल नहीं है, उनको कोई पूछने वाला नहीं है, वो किस तरीके से किन मुश्किलात को झेल रहे हैं, और उनकी मदद करने के लिए हमारी एविएशन, हमारी अथॉरिटीज, हायर अथॉरिटीज की जगह वो आम लोग हैं जो कि अपनी अपनी कैपेसिटी में रहते हुए उनकी मदद करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं।
देखिए, ये तो एक हमारी सैड रियलिटी है कि अगर यहीं पे अगर उनकी कोई वीडियो सोशल मीडिया पे ही वायरल हो जाएगी तो कल अगले ही दिन सारा मीडिया, सारी अथॉरिटीज, सब लोग उनको उनके प्रॉब्लम रिजॉल्व करने के लिए पहुंचे हुए होंगे। तो बिफोर दैट मेरा जो यही एक हमेशा से कहना और रोना है, एक मेरा शिकवा है कि रादर देन बीइंग रिएक्टिव वी हैव टू बी प्रोएक्टिव, कि किसी सिचुएशन को अलार्म बजने से पहले कई लोग शोर मचाएं या सड़कों पे लोग निकल आए, उससे पहले जो एक अथॉरिटी की जिम्मेदारी बनती है उस जिम्मेदारी को फॉलो करना चाहिए। और एक बहुत बड़ा नुकसान हुआ है, गलती जिसकी भी हो वो लेटर ऑन क्लियर हुआ होगा, लेकिन सबसे बड़ी बात यहाँ ये है कि यहाँ इंसानी जानों का नुकसान हुआ है और उन एक एक जान के साथ कई खानदान जुड़े हुए होते हैं और वो सब अफेक्टेड हुए हैं। तो हमारी, मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा इस प्लेटफॉर्म के थ्रू कि इस बहस से निकल जाएं कि गलती किसकी थी, ये करना चाहिए था, वो करना चाहिए था। इस वक्त हम मिलकर दुआ कर सकते हैं कि अल्लाह और वो सारे लोग जिन्होंने अपनी जानें खोई उनकी मग़फ़िरत अता फरमाए, उनके लवाहिकीन को अल्लाह सब्र अता फरमाए, और हम टाइमली वो सारे डिसीजंस ले लें अब इतने क्रैशेस के बाद भी, कि कल को हमें एक और क्रैश के ऊपर ना रोना पड़े। अभी हाल में एक और न्यूज़ के ऊपर भी आपने देखा होगा कि टोरंटो से जो फ्लाइट लैंड हुई उसका भी एक इंजन ट्रबल कर रहा था और उसको ज़बरदस्ती फ्लाई करने की कोशिश की जा रही थी, जिसपे सारे पैसेंजर्स ने शोर किया था और वो फिर फ्लाइट रोक दी गई। तो बिफोर हम और कोई इस तरह के इंसिडेंट्स देखें, इस तरह के और हमें ब्लैक डेज देखना पड़े, आई थिंक इट इज़ हाई टाइम कि जैसे मैंने पिछले प्रोग्राम में भी बात की थी कि लोगों को स्टांस लेना पड़ेगा, बॉयकॉट करना पड़ेगा, जब तक हर चीज़ ऑथेंटिकली क्लेरिफाई ना हो जाए, जस्टिफाई ना हो जाए और एक पब्लिक डोमेन के ऊपर हर चीज़ सामने क्रिस्टल क्लियर फॉर्म में दिखाई जाए।
थैंक यू सो मच उमर कि आपने भी हमें अपना वक्त दिया, और हम फिर आपसे बिल्कुल कांटेक्ट करेंगे और अपने दूसरे शो पे भी हम दोबारा से साथ होंगे। ऑलराइट जी, हम अपने शो के इख्तिताम पे कल हम, जैसे कि मैं बता चुकी हूँ, मेरी पूरी कोशिश है कि हम ये शो कल कर सकें, इस हवाले से डेफिनेटली आप तमाम लोग भी मौजूद रहेंगे। अपना बहुत सारा ख्याल रखिए। अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।
Clear, Mayday, Pakistan 8303.
Pakistan 8303, roger sir, both runways available to land.